Hey guys, how's it going? On this week's video, I'll be breaking down the horse stance. So when I'm referring to the horse stance, the image that may crop up in a lot of people's minds could be Jackie Chan in a really low squat with his arms out, doing some really grueling training by a really demanding and cruel master. But this isn't the case. This isn't the version of horse stance that I'll be talking about today. The version that I will be breaking down will be the one that was taught to me via my Yang Tai Ji instructor, and it's a variation that was further compounded upon by my Xing Yi teacher, Steve Arboleda. And those are the two references that I'll be using in order to break down this particular variation. So what was the purpose of horse stance for training martial arts back in the day? It was a complementary exercise to teach people how to stop using unnecessary force or holding unnecessary tension in the body. And to that end, most people, when they have their arms up in this posture, would just start to feel their traps or their shoulders doing all of the work. The idea was to allow the practitioner, the person putting in the time and effort into this posture, into being able to sink more and to use different muscles in order to maintain the posture for a lot longer periods of time. And in terms of time, what we're talking about is usually like upwards of an hour. So there was a period of time during my own personal practice where this was a mainstay. Like I did about 100 days of standing practice. And I think during those 100 days I made at least an effort to do a bare minimum of 60 minutes of standing, and it would sometimes spill over into like an hour and a half on days that felt particularly good. And the idea for that is that you are not relying on muscles that you're most used to thinking of in order to hold up this posture. So a lot of people in the beginning are going to feel burning in their quads or their calves or their back or their shoulders, and that's simply not the musculature that we want to feel when holding up this position. What we do want to feel is maybe weight on the heels, pressure on the heels. Stop me if you've heard this before. Medial hamstrings, adductors, obliques, particularly on the exhale, and then serratus to hold yourselves up while you're reaching. So you're feeling and you're redistributing the strategies that you would normally utilize to hold yourself up against gravity. And that's the whole purpose of horse stance, at least when it comes to the internal martial arts of Tai Ji, Bagua, and Xing Yi. The whole purpose of it was to reframe or reformat how you manage gravitational load. Because if you're dealing with gravity at the same time that you're trying to apply force to your opponent, then you're splitting your energy, you're splitting your attention into two things when you could just be dealing with the person in front of you. Without much further ado, here is the drill. So the setup for this drill is going to be very similar to your standard deadlift. Your feet are going to be parallel, about hip width apart. You are going to supinate if you'd like. If not, you can just drag your heels back to get some hamstrings kicking in. Posteriorly tilt the pelvis. You're going to feel your spine stacking up. You can exhale. Bring your hands up to about shoulder height. Let the elbows flare out a little bit. And then from here, you're just going to work on feeling hamstrings, pressure on the heels, and you're going to try to protract the shoulder blades without bringing the rest of the rib cage forward. Your hands are not pointing, your fingers are not pointing straight out, but they're not limp and dead either. Somewhere around here, nice middle ground. So if you want a more concrete idea of how the shape of your hands, you can just take the palm against your forehead, and that would be more or less the shape of your hands. And you just stand here. You're going to try to watch when you lose hamstrings, when you start to extend your back a little bit, when you start to feel shoulders, and you're going to start to work and readjust during the time frame. So in the beginning, you shoot anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. 10 minutes would be more ideal, but the whole idea is that you can stay here for a little bit of time. Okay. So from the side, same thing, feet are parallel. Get hamstrings by digging your heels back into the ground. You're going to posteriorly tilt the pelvis. Rib cage is going to stack on top of the pelvis, and from here, you're just going to hug a tree. And that's it. So one thing that I want to point out is don't be fooled by how easy this drill looks. When Master CK Chu first taught it to me many years ago, he actually related to me how many people weren't strong enough to actually do the upright version. So he would have people actually hunched over by a lot. They actually looked like little turtles. And he would say that over time he would slowly coach them into a more upright posture. But for a lot of people, doing it that way was too demanding. And I remember my early days training at that school. I tried to go immediately into the upright position, and I was fried after a minute. Like I just couldn't hold it up. It actually reminds me of my first class with Master CK Chu, where I was just doing the opening sequence for Yang style Tai Ji, and I was in horse stance essentially, but I was just like moving my arms and doing the opening sequences of the form. And I remember walking out of that class, going down the stairs, and my entire back was on fire. But it wasn't on fire because I had worked my back. It was on fire because I could sense that there was a lack of tension, or my back was released after having been overworked for years and years on end. And I remember that sensation would always be with me like the first month when I would leave class. Then I would still feel like this sensation of like my back is just, it's on fire. I had no way to really describe this because it wasn't like you were doing heavy deadlifts and your back was really sore the day after, mostly because you were doing them wrong. But it was more along the lines of like, it was a really, really different sensation, and I couldn't verbalize it at the time because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I do remember at the time being exposed to it, and Master CK Chu would tell us like, you have to tuck the pelvis. And I remember at the time thinking that's not how biomechanics works. You have to anteriorly tilt the pelvis, you have to arch your back, you have to, brace your abs. And what he was teaching was really ahead of its time, even to this day. When you look at modern strength training, they're teaching you to go into an anterior pelvic tilt. They're teaching you to go into lumbar extension. They're teaching you to use a lot of high threshold strategies in order to manage external load. But these guys figured it out hundreds and hundreds of years ago that the best way to manage gravity is by utilizing hamstrings, adductors, obliques, serratus, by keeping your spine fairly stacked. And then you can still utilize these same principles and apply them to, let's say, your deadlifts or your squats or your presses or what have you. But these guys really figured it out way back when, and it's just going to show you that if you're successfully applying principles to your movement practice, it doesn't matter what your movement practice is, it has to abide by the same principles. So if you're looking at internal martial arts, if that internal martial art followed principles, it's going to look very similar to, let's say, somebody who does rumba or salsa if it's taught by a competent teacher, or even strength training. Like all of these different disciplines still have to abide by the same principles because there's only one human body. There's only one shape for the human body. You have torso, ribs, arms, legs, what have you. So yeah, there it is. So that's it for this week. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit me up on Instagram at MejorStrength, and I'll see you guys next Tuesday.